Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Lincoln to Local. I'm Krista Carroll, and today we will be covering this week of legislative session, which was a deadline week, and a look into next week, which is DC Summit. Joining me this week on Lincoln to Local is Kaylee Holman with our public policy team. So Kaylee, this was a deadline week, a pretty busy week at the Capitol. Can you tell us where some of the bills that we've been watching as Farm Bureau are currently at?
For sure. So we actually started, this is the second major deadline. So after the first deadline, we had roughly 1,000 bills. After the second deadline, which was this past Thursday, we have about 800 moving forward. So we have two more major deadlines before the final deadline, which is sine die at the end of May.
So the hazard mitigation bill that we've been watching, can you kind of give us an update as to what happened to that and where's that at?
Yes, so we've been watching a bill about hazard mitigation, which a lot of our members understand that that's a very real issue. You know, Oklahoma has a lot of natural disasters that occur, and we need to definitely be doing something about it. However, our concern has been the way that we be funding these hazard mitigation districts is a raise in property taxes, which is historically something that our members have stood opposed to. This bill has been around for several years. We were expecting it probably to get a floor hearing this week, really. However, it was not heard on the floor, and so for most intents and purposes, it will not be available for consideration the remainder of the year. However, we are aware that sometimes rules can get blurred a little bit, so it definitely could come up, and we will definitely be watching to make sure that if it does, that we're aware and send out action alerts and information to our members so they can let their legislators know where we stand on that issue. But we do feel pretty good that for the remainder of this year that is not a threat directly to our members any longer.
There is also some talk of medical marijuana legislation coming up. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what that looks like?
Yeah, so a bill that actually passed this week will not be necessarily a new one to most of our members. It was an idea introduced last year that didn't make the final deadline, but what it would do is require applicants for a medical marijuana grower's license to also submit a bond when they apply for their medical marijuana license. And the purpose of that is that if for some reason they were a bad actor, that their license had to be revoked, that there's some money there that's set aside to reclaim the land. So the minimum amount that it has to be is $50,000. If the Medical Marijuana Authority or the Department of Environmental Quality feels like the particular piece of land that the grower is wanting to grow medical marijuana on would require more funds for possible reclamation, they can require them to have a bond of a greater amount than that, but $50,000 is the pretty much the minimum threshold. There's also an exemption in there if the grower has owned the land for at least 5 years. They don't have to get a bond. You know, they're kind of showing some sort of permanency. Really, the concern there was we've had a lot of people coming into our state in the past couple of years that show no plans to stay. They're just here to do a quick job, grow some marijuana for a little bit, and then get out. And there's a concern in the counties as well as some communities about what do we do with this land to get it to a proper place where we could grow crops on it or use it for some other useful means after these people leave. So this is kind of a way to look at that. This bill actually was passed with an emergency clause, so instead of the typical November 1st date that it would go into effect, it would actually go into effect as soon as the governor signs it if it passes the House successfully and is signed by him.
So next week, we have an exciting week for Farm Bureau members, which is they'll be going to D.C. for D.C. Summit. Can you kind of give an explanation and some highlights for our members who are going?
Yeah, so we have roughly 60 members going to D.C., and it's been a while since we've actually been able to make it. The last time we were successfully able to make it to D.C. with a full group was in 2019, and then with COVID and some other circumstances, we just haven't been able to make it back up there. So I think a lot of the members are really excited to head back up there. They'll obviously be meeting with our congressional delegation, which is something that they do nearly every year. This is an exciting year, I think, to be able to go because Farm Bill is top of mind for a lot of our members as well as senators and congressmen in D.C. As they're working on that and hoping to pass that maybe this year. So that will be a big one that they're talking to their legislators about. We're also going to be talking with different industry professionals, quite a slate of them that's headed for the members that are headed up there. So I think that's something very exciting for our members to be looking forward to meet with them, kind of get their perspective on, different parts of the industries that they're working on, whether that's crops or insurance or livestock, just kind of getting their perspective on what's going on in their particular industries, talking with them about what they think will happen with Farm Bill, expressing some of our concerns. And it's always just also a really good time for them to go to see DC. It's in the spring. Cherry blossoms will be blooming, so it'll be a fun time, I think, for our people to be up there.
Great. Well, thank you, Kaylee, and thank all of you for joining us on this week's episode of Lincoln to Local.